People think financial crimes start with greed. They don't. They start with trust. My name is Savannah Cole, and for 9 years I was the financial controller at Harrington West, a boutique investment advisory firm that handled portfolios for politicians, surgeons, and old money families that still used fountain pens to sign checks. I built the reporting system from scratch, audited every account twice, and never once missed a quarterly reconciliation. Which is why they chose me to frame. 3 weeks ago, I was reconciling the quarterly reports when I found an entry that didn't belong. A silent transfer out of the Harper Trust Fund, listed as reallocation, routed through an internal clearing account I didn't authorize. The number wasn't enormous by their standards, 800,000, but it was too clean. Too quiet. Someone had buried it under a stack of legitimate wire logs like a bone in soft soil. I thought it was a clerical glitch until I checked the internal access history. The login used to approve it wasn't mine, but it carried my credentials. My name. My digital signature. My clearance badge. There was a time I would have confronted someone gently. Asked questions in the name of procedure. That was before I learned what people will do when they assume the law is too slow to catch them. I downloaded every audit file they didn't know I could still see and traced the transfer backward. It didn't begin with the Harper Trust. It passed through 6 accounts in 3 weeks, all with similar patterns. In total, just over 5 million had been rerouted, cleaned, and disguised as conservative reallocations. And on paper, I had approved every one of them. I went to the only person I trusted in that building, Harriet Keene, our senior accountant and the woman who trained me when I was 25 and still believed diligence could protect you. I showed her the transfer trail and the login spoof. She stared at the screen, then at me. "Savannah, this is not sloppy," she said. "This is curated." "Someone wants me holding the bag," I said. She closed her office door and locked it. Or out of the building entirely before the board audit next month. We printed nothing. We spoke little. And we both knew this was bigger than a rogue portfolio manager. The first real crack came when I checked the vendor reports. 2 of the shell accounts the money passed through belonged to advisory partners our CFO, Dane Mercer, had introduced into rotation last year. He had the charm of someone who never touched keyboards, only handshakes. By the time I left the office that night, my badge access had already changed without notification. I found out when I tried to enter the archive room and my keycard flashed red. They were moving faster than I'd calculated. At 2 a.m, a message arrived from an unknown number. "Stop pulling threads. You're already the one wearing them." I didn't respond. I don't scare easily. But I don't underestimate people who build traps they think you won't see until the door closes. The next morning, I arrived early and found my desk drawer slightly open. Inside was a printed ledger copy of one of the fake transfers with my signature at the bottom. Except I sign in ink when it matters, and that one was printed. Whoever forged it didn't know I loop the tail of my S when I'm angry but not when I'm calm. They were confident, but not careful. And that makes people like me dangerous. I didn't report it to HR. I didn't confront Dane. I went home and opened a new encrypted drive one no one at Harrington West knew existed and labeled the folder remainder. Not because I planned to run. Because I planned to finish what they started. I didn't sleep the night I opened the remainder folder. I catalogued every transfer I could trace, every forged approval, every signature that wasn't mine but claimed to be. There was a rhythm to it, always just under $1 million, always through one of 3 holding accounts, always tied to clients who trusted us enough not to monitor the fine print. By noon the next day, my name was quietly restricted from 3 internal systems. IT claimed it was a security recalibration. Harriet called it what it was, a prelude to disposal. She met me in the parking garage during lunch, pretending to walk to her car. She didn't waste time. "They're prepping a narrative," she said. "Whistleblower gone unstable. Unauthorized access. Possible mental health leave recommendation." I almost laughed. "So I'm being rebranded before I'm removed." "Listen to me," she said. "If you go to compliance before you have everything, they'll erase your access and rewrite the chain." I already knew that. The problem wasn't what they'd done. It was who was protecting it. That afternoon, I tested something. I filed a dummy notice for a 10-day internal variance check, something routine, something harmless, on one of the shell accounts. Within an hour, Dane appeared at my desk with the kind of smile people use to hide a weapon. "Saw your variance flag," he said. "Thought we agreed to cycle those after Q2. "We didn't agree," I said. "And variance reviews don't need approval." He didn't blink. "Savannah, you're stretched thin. Maybe let the junior team handle the tedium." He meant, "Stop looking where we buried the bodies." I didn't answer, which he interpreted as submission, a mistake on his part. That evening, I visited a former employee, Caleb Rourke. He'd been our internal systems architect before he resigned 18 months ago after a dispute with Dane. People assumed he left for a bigger offer. I never believed it. He took one look at the flash drive in my hand and said, "How deep?" 5 million documented, I said. "Maybe more I can't see yet." "And your name on all of it," he said. "Yes." He boiled water for tea like we were talking about weather. When he finally spoke, it was with that unsettling calm of someone who has already imagined the fire. "You're not wrong about Mercer," he said. "But you're not aiming high enough." I waited. "He doesn't move that kind of money alone," Caleb said. "And he doesn't pick his own fall person. Someone higher signed off on using you." I knew what he meant before he said it. "The board," I said quietly. He nodded once. "And maybe one of the families whose money is missing. If they recover it, they'll pretend you were the malfunction that helped them fix it. Unless I pull it out from under them first." He smiled without amusement. "Then you better get proof they can't bury." That night, I encrypted copies of every file and stashed them across 3 drives, one in my apartment, one in a rented lockbox, and one in Harriet's possession. Insurance, in case someone tried to make me disappear on paper or otherwise. The next morning, IT formally revoked my access to wire approvals. Dane sent a polite email thanking me for my years of service and informing me I'd be transitioning to audit support while my credentials were under review. Translation: I was no longer a threat in their eyes. Good. People only watch you when they think you can still hurt them. I prefer when they turn their backs. They thought sidelining me would slow me down. It just made me harder to see. I stopped using company systems and started following people instead of numbers. Harriet fed me quiet updates from inside. Caleb rerouted a few access logs so any digital trail I left would loop back to harmless endpoints. I moved like I had already surrendered. They relaxed. That was their first real mistake. The second was assuming the Harper Dowell family would stay quiet. 3 days after my access was revoked, I received an anonymous text with a photo of a ledger entry. The amount was familiar. The signature at the bottom was mine. Except this time they forgot to scrub the metadata. The print order ID traced back to Dane's executive printer. I sent the image to Harriet. All she replied was, "I can get the print log." Good. That gave us timestamp proof of forgery. But I needed more than paperwork if I planned to take down people who had lawyers on retainer and friends in federal offices. I went to the only client who would care enough to act before the company could. The widow of the Harper Dowell Trust, Lydia Hart, had a reputation for paying attention to the details others ignored. I requested a meeting disguised as a routine portfolio review. When I arrived at her townhouse, she was already standing at the door like she knew why I was there. She led me to a private sitting room and closed the door herself. No assistant. No greetings. "How much did they take?" she asked. "From your account or all of them?" I said. Her jaw tightened. "Start with mine. 814,000 routed through shell vendors. Your report was altered before distribution." She did not flinch. "Who signed it?" "My name is on it. I did not authorize it." "And who actually did?" "Dane Mercer. And whoever sits above him." She leaned back slowly. "You have proof. Enough to start a fire. Not enough to control the burn." She nodded once. "Then get the rest. I will give you cover." I had not expected that. She opened a drawer and slid a business card across the table. No name, no title, Just a direct number and a firm I recognized for one reason only. They did federal fraud cases and did not lose. Use that when you are ready, she said. On my way out, she added, if they think you will stay quiet, let them. Silence makes people speak with less caution. Back at my apartment building, I noticed something new. A black sedan parked across the street with two people inside pretending not to watch the entrance. Mercer was getting nervous. That night, I packed a go bag and left it by the door. Not because I planned to run, but because I planned to make them think I might. People chasing shadows rarely look at what is right in front of them. The next morning, I returned to the office and acted like someone expecting termination. No eye contact.
No confrontación.
Just paperwork, a box plant I did not care about, and a neutral face. They watched me without watching me. By afternoon, rumors were already circulating. Words like unstable and unauthorized access floated through hallways in soft voices. Perfect. Let them narrate my downfall. The louder the whispers, the less they check the locks behind them. That evening, while they assumed I was licking wounds, I used Harriet's key to access the off-site archive the partners rarely remembered existed. Caleb had already reactivated an old security pass under maintenance profile. The system still thought I was nobody. The files I found were older than the current fraud trail. Quarterly summaries with margin notes. Vendor contracts written by hand first, then typed later. And one folder marked only with 3 letters, DPM. Inside were draft agreements between Dane and a private investment group tied to 2 of our board members. The dates lined up with the first missing transfers. They were not just moving money. They were restructuring ownership. And I was their exit strategy. I didn't go home after finding the DPM folder. I went to Harriet's townhouse. She opened the door before I knocked twice and locked it behind me. I spread the documents across her dining table. She read in silence, eyes moving like someone measuring blast radius. They're not hiding theft, she said. They're building a buyout. And I'm the liability they cash out with. She nodded. They trigger an internal investigation, pin the losses on you, recover portion of the funds, and sell control to whatever group Dane is fronting for. Lydia Hart gave me access to a federal fraud attorney, I said. But I need something they can't dismiss as internal politics. Harriet tapped a specific page. A draft wire authorization with my forged signature and a handwritten note in the margin. The initials were DM. Not Dane Mercer. Douglas Madsen. Board member. Old money. Untouchable if the case stayed civil. If Madsen is in this, Harriet said, it goes deeper than investor fraud. Good. Deeper meant louder when it cracked. We spent the night making 2 piles, evidence that proved forgery and evidence that tied the board to it. Caleb spoofed my location data so no one could claim chain of custody tampering. By 3 in the morning, I had a clean packet with copies stored across 4 encrypted drives. The next day, I played my role exactly how they scripted it. I showed up late. I packed my desk. I let people stare. When HR called me in to discuss concerns, I sat down with the bored expression of someone already defeated. Dane and a legal rep were waiting. They had a pre-written statement about compliance breaches and misuse of access. I let them read half of it before interrupting. I'll need a printed copy of everything you just said, I told the legal rep, and confirmation it's being recorded. She paused. This is an internal meeting, not. Then you won't mind if I record it too. Dane's smile thinned. Savannah, there's no need to escalate. I leaned back. Then don't. They thought I was bluffing. I let them. I signed nothing. I admitted nothing. I walked out with a written notice that said I was being placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Perfect. Now I was officially outside their chain. By evening, the black sedan returned. They followed me 3 blocks, then stopped when I entered a hotel instead of my apartment. Let them waste fuel. I was already 3 steps ahead. I met Caleb and Harriet in a rented conference room. We organized the final strike. Harriet would trigger an anonymous discrepancy alert to the state auditor tied to one of the falsified accounts. Caleb would send the forged signature logs and printer metadata to Lydia's legal contact with a timestamp that forced review within 24 hours. I would deliver the board documents directly, but not to the board. To the families whose money was stolen. We timed everything to hit on a Monday morning before the partners could rewrite the narrative. At 6:59 am, I emailed a summary packet to 3 clients with the subject line, "You were not supposed to see this." At 7:10, Lydia's attorney submitted a quiet inquiry to the Financial Crimes Division with attachments. At 7:30, the anonymous state alert landed in the audit office. At 8:15, I walked into the building holding a folder and a coffee like nothing had changed. By 8:20, everything had. Security guards were positioned in the lobby. One of the board members was arguing on the phone near the elevators. 2 analysts were already crying in the hallway. And Dane was nowhere in sight. Harriet texted me one line, "They know something hit. They don't know from where yet." I didn't smile. Not yet. When the first federal vehicle pulled up outside, I finally let myself breathe. They had planned my exit. They forgot to plan for my return. When federal auditors arrive before the partners finish their morning coffee, nobody pretends it is routine. The building went silent in waves, like sound itself was evacuating. They called me into conference room B as if I still worked there. 2 federal investigators sat across from me. Not hostile. Not friendly. Just observant. One of them opened a file. "Ms. Cole, we understand you were placed on leave yesterday." "That is what they wrote," I said. "Do you have reason to believe the allegations against you were fabricated?" "I have proof they were." I handed them the drive labeled Variant 3. They plugged it in without leaving the room. I watched their eyes shift as they scrolled. Printer logs. Badge access trails. Forged signatures layered over my credentials. Draft agreements between Dane, Madsen, and 2 partner groups. The older agent closed the laptop. "We will need full statements from you and your accountant associate." "You will have them in writing within the hour," I said. While they moved upstairs to question the board, I stepped into the hall. Harriet was already there, pretending to be surprised. Caleb texted from across the street. Mercer just tried to leave in the loading dock. They stopped him. By noon, the board was no longer holding meetings. They were giving interviews. Madsen was escorted out through a side entrance with the frozen expression of someone calculating who to sacrifice. Dane was in federal custody by the time the markets opened. I waited until the building calmed, then walked into the office where I had been relocated the day before. My name was still on the door. I opened my laptop, my real one, not the scrubbed company device, and typed a final note into the remainder folder. They tried to turn me into the wreckage. Instead, I became the evidence. I didn't need a press release, a promotion, or anyone's applause. I wanted one thing: only the truth documented in a way no one could rewrite. By sunset, word had spread through every floor, every client circle, every family office tied to the firm. The narrative flipped faster than I expected. Not unstable. Not negligent. Not the fall girl. I became the warning. 2 days later, Lydia Hart's attorney called. The board, what was left of it, had voted to reinstate me pending a full restructuring. They offered a title I did not ask for and control of an internal audit division that did not exist until that morning. I accepted one condition only: full investigative authority and the right to remove anyone tied to the cover-up. They agreed. People assume revenge is loud, dramatic, scorched earth. They think it tastes like victory. It doesn't. Real revenge is factual, signed, time-stamped and delivered so cleanly that no one argues when the door closes behind them. I didn't set out to burn Harrington West. I set out to survive it. What burned was everything built on the belief that I wouldn't fight. And now they finally understand silence is only dangerous if you mistake it for surrender.